The stagecoach lurched to a stop in front of Silverwood's general store, and Lily Rose Brennan stepped down into the Colorado dust with 11 cents in her pocket and blood dried at the corner of her mouth. 3 days from Philadelphia, 3 days of rattling bones and sleepless nights, clutching her carpetbag to her chest while the driver's eyes lingered too long in the rearview mirror. 3 days wondering if she'd made the worst mistake of her life. The mountain town spread before her like something from a dime novel. Wooden buildings lined a wide dirt street, their false fronts promising civilization while their weathered boards told the truth about frontier life. Pine trees crowded the edges of town, and beyond them the Rockies rose into a sky so blue it hurt to look at. The air smelled of sawdust and wood smoke and possibility. Lily touched her split lip gently, wincing. The driver had tried something on the second night when they'd stopped to water the horses. She'd fought back with the only weapon she had, a carpentry awl her father had given her years ago, drew blood. He'd left her alone after that, but the hatred in his eyes promised she'd pay for the insult somehow. Men always made you pay. She smoothed her traveling dress, navy blue wool that had once been fine, but now showed every mile of hard road. Her carpetbag held everything she owned. 2 other dresses, both mended multiple times. Her father's old leather tool roll, the chisels and planes inside worth more than gold to her. A small coat that had belonged to Clara, still smelling faintly of lavender and sickness. And tucked in the bottom, the letter that had brought her here. The letter. She pulled it from her pocket now, unfolding the creased paper for the 100th time. The handwriting was neat, masculine, practical. Miss Brennan, I am Jonah Stone, carpenter and mill owner in Silverwood, Colorado Territory. I require a wife to manage my household and help raise my young nephew. I can offer respectability, steady income, and a future. If you are of good character and willing to work, I believe we could make a fair arrangement. Arrive before month's end. Jonah Stone. No poetry, no promises of love, just honest work for honest pay, which was more than she'd had in Philadelphia, more than she'd had since her father died 2 years ago and left her to the mercy of her stepfather, Henry Clark. Henry. Even thinking his name made her stomach turn. He'd married her mother for the carpentry business, then sold it the week after her mother died, gambling away every cent at cards and dice. When creditors came calling, when the rent came due, when there was nothing left but a daughter who could still fetch a price, Henry had found his solution. $80 from the mail-order bride agency, $40 to pay his debts, $40 for whiskey, and another round of cards. Lily had left in the night, taking only what she could carry. Left Henry passed out drunk on the floor. Left the Philadelphia row house where she'd been born, where her father had taught her to read wood grain and cut dovetail joints. Left her sister's grave in the potter's field because she couldn't even afford a proper headstone. Clara, 8 years old, dead from consumption because medicine cost $8 and Lily only had 3. She'd pawned everything, her mother's wedding ring, her father's good saw, her own winter coat. Still not enough. Never enough. She pressed her palm against the small coat in her bag, feeling the wool rough against her skin. Some things you carried. Some things you couldn't leave behind. A woman passed on the boardwalk, expensive dress rustling, and gave Lily a once-over that took in every rip, every stain, every mark of poverty. Her nose wrinkled slightly before she moved on. Lily was used to that look. The look that said you don't belong here, the look that said you're less than. Well, she'd see about that. The letter had given an address, Stonewood Carpentry, east end of town, near the lumber mill. Lily picked up her bag, straightened her shoulders, and started walking. The town was busier than she'd expected. Miners coming down from the high country, ranchers in for supplies, families going about their daily business. A group of children played in the street, throwing a ball back and forth. Their laughter echoed off the storefronts, bright and uncomplicated. A dog barked somewhere. A hammer rang against an anvil. Normal life. The kind of life that had nothing to do with hunger or fear or sleeping with an awl under your pillow, in case your stepfather got ideas. She passed a boarding house. 3 stories of whitewashed wood with a sign that read, Murphy's Rooms. A woman stood on the porch, gray-haired and stern-faced, sweeping dust into the street. Their eyes met for a moment. The woman's gaze sharpened, taking in Lily's condition with the practiced eye of someone who'd seen hard times before. Then she nodded once, a gesture that might have been respect or recognition or simple acknowledgement that one woman's struggle was much like another's. Lily nodded back and kept walking. The east end of town was rougher, fewer painted signs, more practical buildings. A blacksmith's forge sent sparks into the afternoon air. A stable yard held a dozen horses, their tails swishing at flies. And there, at the corner where the town gave way to forest, stood Stonewood Carpentry. It was bigger than she'd expected, a 2-story workshop with wide double doors standing open to catch the breeze. The sound of sawing came from inside, rhythmic and steady. The smell of fresh-cut pine mixed with something else, some kind of finish or oil. Stacks of lumber lined the yard outside, organized by type and size with a precision that spoke of careful management. This was a real operation, not some backwoods shed. This was a business. Lily's heart beat faster. Maybe this would work. Maybe Jonah Stone was exactly what his letter suggested, a practical man looking for a practical arrangement. Maybe she could build a life here, away from Henry and Philadelphia and all the ghosts that haunted her. She stepped into the workshop's shadow, letting her eyes adjust to the dimmer light inside. The space was cathedral high, sawdust floating in the air like snow. Workbenches lined the walls, covered in tools that made her fingers itch to touch them. Half-finished projects sat waiting, a staircase railing carved with leaves, a cabinet with doors that would fit together like puzzle pieces, a rocking chair that curved like a dancer frozen mid-spin. Beautiful work. Her father would have wept to see craftsmanship like this. A man stood at the far bench, his back to her, running a hand plane over a long board. The curls of wood peeled away, smooth and perfect, falling to the floor in ribbons. His movements were sure, practiced, the kind of confidence that came from 10,000 hours of repetition. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing work pants and a shirt with the sleeves rolled to the elbows, dark hair touched with gray at the temples, strong hands, scarred from years of labor. Lily cleared her throat. "Mr. Stone?" The planing stopped. The man set down his tool with careful precision, then turned to face her. Jonah Stone looked like he'd been carved from the same wood he worked. Hard angles and weathered lines, gray eyes that had seen too much sorrow to trust easily, maybe 35, maybe older. The kind of face that would be handsome if it ever smiled, but right now just looked tired. Those gray eyes swept over her, taking in her split lip, her stained dress, her carpetbag clutched in white-knuckled hands. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his gaze. Surprise, maybe, or disappointment. "I'm Lily Brennan," she said, forcing her voice steady, "from Philadelphia. I got your letter." Silence, long enough that her heart started to sink. Then Jonah Stone said, very quietly, "I didn't send any letter." The words hit like a physical blow. Lily's vision tunneled, the workshop spinning around her. No, that wasn't possible. She'd spent her last dollars on the stagecoach fare. She'd left everything behind. She'd come all this way. "I don't understand." Her voice came out small, childlike. She hated how weak she sounded. "Your letter said you needed a wife. It had your name, your business. Let me see it." She handed over the paper with trembling fingers, watched his face as he read, saw his jaw tighten, saw anger flash hot in those gray eyes. "This isn't my handwriting." He thrust the letter back at her. "Someone's playing a game and you got caught in it. I'm sorry you traveled all this way, Miss Brennan, but I didn't send for a mail-order bride. I don't need a wife. I won't be taking one." The finality in his voice was worse than anything, worse than Henry's cruelty, worse than watching Clara die, worse than 3 days of fear on a stagecoach. Because this was the end of hope. This was the moment when all her desperate planning crashed against reality. Please. She hated begging, but pride was a luxury she couldn't afford. I have nowhere else to go. I can work. I'm strong. I can clean, cook, whatever you need. I don't need anything. His voice was flat, emotionless. There's a boarding house back in town. Try there. I don't have money for a boarding house. The words came out sharper than she intended. I have 11 cents. That's what's left after traveling from Philadelphia to chase a lie. Something crossed his face then. Not quite pity, but close. He opened his mouth to speak. Uncle Jonah? A boy's voice calling from the back of the workshop. Who's that? A child appeared from behind a stack of lumber, maybe 10 years old, all elbows and knees. Dark hair like Jonah's, but his eyes were lighter, more open. He stared at Lily with unabashed curiosity. Nobody, Tommy. Jonah's voice gentled slightly when he addressed the boy. Go back to your sanding. But she looks like she needs help. Tommy moved closer, looking up at Lily with concern that made her throat tight. Did someone hit you? Tommy, Jonah's voice hardened. Inside, now. The boy hesitated, then obeyed, disappearing through a door that led to what must be living quarters attached to the workshop. But his words hung in the air. Did someone hit you? Jonah's eyes found her split lip again. His expression was still hard, still closed, but she saw his hands flex at his sides, saw him take a long breath. Miss Brennan, I'm sorry you were deceived. I'm sorry you came all this way, but I can't help you. I won't be responsible for another person's welfare. I learned that lesson once, and I won't learn it again. There was pain there, old deep pain that had scarred over but never healed. She recognized it because she wore the same scars. I understand. She did. She understood that everyone carried damage, that everyone built walls, but understanding didn't change her situation. Can you at least tell me who might have sent that letter? Who would pretend to be you? Jonah's jaw worked for a moment. Then he said, Vincent Cain owns the mill across town. He's got a sense of humor like that. Why would he do this to you? Because he can. Because he likes making people look foolish. Jonah turned back to his workbench. Picking up the plane again. The conversation was over. I'm sorry, Miss Brennan. I truly am. But you need to leave. Lily stood there for another moment, watching him work, watching the wood curls fall. Part of her wanted to scream. Part of her wanted to cry. Part of her wanted to take one of those beautiful chisels and hurt something the way she was hurting. But mostly, she just felt tired. Tired down to her bones. Tired of fighting and losing. Tired of hoping and being disappointed. She picked up her carpet bag and walked back out into the sunlight. The town looked different now. Less like possibility, more like one more place she didn't belong. The mountains were still beautiful, the sky still painfully blue, but none of it mattered because she was alone and broke and had nowhere to go. 11 cents, that was her fortune. That was all that stood between her and starvation. She started walking back toward the boarding house. Maybe the gray-haired woman would have mercy. Maybe there was work to be had, dishes to wash, floors to scrub. Maybe she could earn a bed for the night, a meal, enough time to figure out what came next. The Murphys' room sign swayed gently in the breeze. Lily climbed the porch steps, her carpet bag feeling heavier with each movement. The door stood open to catch the air. Inside, the boarding house was neat and clean. If Spartan. Simple furniture, whitewashed walls, the smell of lye soap and coffee. A staircase led to the upper floors. A dining room open to the left, tables set for supper. The gray-haired woman emerged from a back room, wiping her hands on her apron. Up close, she was older than Lily had first thought, maybe 55, with the kind of weathered face that came from hard work and harder years. But her eyes were sharp, missing nothing. Help you? Her voice was rough, a smoker's rasp. I'm looking for a room. Lily forced herself to meet that sharp gaze. I can't pay much right now, but I can work. I'm good with cleaning, mending, cooking. How much is not much? 11 cents. The woman's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes. Recognition, maybe. She'd been poor once too, maybe still was, in all the ways that mattered. 11 cents won't buy you a night, she crossed her arms. But I could use help with the supper service. You work tonight. Clean up after. I'll give you a meal and a bed in the attic. Tomorrow we'll see about more permanent arrangements. Relief flooded through Lily so fast it made her dizzy. Thank you. Thank you so much. Don't thank me yet. I work my help hard. The woman stuck out a calloused hand. Kate Murphy. I own this place. Lily Brennan. She shook the offered hand, feeling the strength in that grip. I won't disappoint you. We'll see. Kate's eyes narrowed slightly, taking in the split lip, the exhausted set of Lily's shoulders. You running from something, girl? No, ma'am. Just running toward something that turned out not to exist. Kate snorted. Ain't that always the way? Come on, then. Put your bag upstairs, third door on the right. Then get yourself down to the kitchen. We serve at 6, and I've got 12 boarders who'll complain if their food's cold. The work was exactly what Lily needed. Mindless, physical, no time to think about Jonah Stone or forged letters or the fact that she'd gambled everything on a lie. She peeled potatoes until her hands cramped, stirred pots of stew until her arm ached, scrubbed pans until her fingers were red and raw. The boarders filed in at 6 sharp, a mix of miners and merchants, older men mostly, worn down by years of chasing fortune in the high country. They ate with single-minded focus, shoveling food like they were stoking a furnace. Barely looked at her when she brought fresh bread or refilled water pitchers, all except one. He came in last, taking a seat at the corner table. Younger than the others, maybe 40, with slicked back hair and a suit that was too nice for a mining town. His smile showed too many teeth, and his eyes moved over Lily in a way that made her skin crawl. Well now. His voice was smooth, cultured. Kate's got new help, and prettier than the last girl. Kate appeared from the kitchen, her face hard. Leave her be, Cain. She's here to work, not entertain you. Cain. Vincent Cain. The man who'd sent the forged letter. Lily felt her anger spike hot and bright. This man had destroyed her last hope for sport, had brought her across the country as a joke. She set down the water pitcher very carefully, afraid of what she might do with it otherwise. Cain's smile widened. I'm just being friendly, Kate. No harm in friendly. Your version of friendly usually ends with someone getting hurt. Kate jerked her head at Lily. Kitchen, now. But Lily didn't move. She stared at Cain, memorizing that smug face, that expensive suit, making a promise to herself that someday, somehow this man would pay for what he'd done. You're Vincent Cain, she said quietly. His eyebrows rose. My reputation precedes me. You sent a letter to Philadelphia, pretending to be Jonah Stone, asking for a mail-order bride. The room went quiet. Every boarder stopped eating, forks frozen halfway to mouths. Kate's expression turned thunderous. Cain laughed, actually laughed. Oh, that. Yes, I thought Jonah could use a little excitement in his life. Did you actually fall for it? Come all the way out here expecting to marry that gloomy carpenter? I spent my last money getting here. Lily's voice was steady now, cold. I have nowhere to go, no way to get home, because you thought it would be funny. Well? Cain dabbed at his mouth with a napkin. I suppose that is unfortunate. Tell you what, since I'm feeling generous, I could use help at my mill. I'll pay you $5 a week. That's more than fair for a woman. And what exactly would this help entail? His smile turned predatory. Whatever I need, sweetheart. Cooking, cleaning, keeping me company when the nights get long. The other boarders looked away. Kate moved forward, her hand reaching for something under her apron, but Lily held up one hand, stopping her. I'd rather starve, Lily said clearly. Cain's expression darkened. Careful, girl. Jobs are scarce in Silverwood, especially for outsiders. You insult me. You insult the man who basically runs this town." "Then I guess I'm insulting you." He stood slowly, deliberately, using his height to intimidate, moved close enough that she could smell pomade and whiskey on him. "You'll regret this. I guarantee it." "Possibly." Lily didn't back down. "But at least I'll regret it with my dignity intact." For a moment she thought he might hit her. Saw his hand twitch, saw the rage flash across his face. But then Kate was there, stepping between them, and whatever she had under her apron was now visible in her hand, a small pistol, old but well-maintained. "Out," Kate said flatly. "You're not welcome in my house anymore, Cain. Find somewhere else to take your meals." Cain looked at the gun, then at Kate, then at Lily. His smile came back, colder than before. "This isn't over. Remember what I said, girl? Jobs are scarce. You'll come begging eventually. They all do." He left, his expensive boots loud on the wooden floor. The door slammed behind him. Silence. Then slowly the other boarders went back to eating, conversations resuming in low murmurs. Crisis averted. Entertainment over. Kate tucked the pistol away. "That was stupid. I know. He'll make your life hell now. He owns half the businesses in town, has the sheriff in his pocket. Cross him and you'll find every door closed." "I know that too." Lily met Kate's eyes. "But I've been pushed around by men like him my whole life. I'm done bending." Kate studied her for a long moment. Then, incredibly, she smiled. It transformed her face, made her look younger, softer. "Good. I like you, Lily Brennan. You've got spine. The world eats women without spine." "The world tries to eat us anyway." "True enough." Kate squeezed her shoulder, a gesture that might have been comfort or solidarity or both. "Come on, let's get these dishes done. Tomorrow we'll figure out real work for you, and I'll talk to some people, see who's hiring, and who'll tell Cain to go to hell." They worked side by side in the kitchen, washing plates and scrubbing pots while the boarders finished their meals upstairs. Kate talked while they worked, filling the silence with information about Silverwood. The town was maybe 10 years old, built on lumber and silver mining. Most of the men who'd come seeking fortune had found only hard work and broken dreams, but a few had struck it rich. Vincent Cain was one of them. Started as a mill hand, now owned Cain Lumber and half a dozen other properties. Ruthless in business, worse in his personal life. "He's got a mean streak," Kate said, scrubbing at a stubborn pot. "Couple of years back, a young man named Walter worked at his mill. Good kid, my son actually. Started asking questions about the wood Cain was using for a bridge contract. Said the timber was rotten, dangerous, warned it wouldn't hold." Kate's hands stilled in the wash water. Week later, Walter had an accident, crushed by a falling log. Sheriff ruled it bad luck, but I know better. I know Cain killed my boy for threatening his profit. I'm sorry. The words felt inadequate. That's terrible. It's the world. Kate resumed scrubbing, her movements harder now, angry. The Cains get away with murder because they've got money and power. The rest of us just try to survive. What about Jonah Stone? Where does he fit in all this? Kate's expression softened slightly. Jonah's a good man. Quiet, keeps to himself mostly. His wife and baby daughter died about 3 years back. Fever took them both while he was away buying timber in Denver. He came home to find them already buried. Broke something in him. He's never been the same. Lily thought about those gray eyes, that flat voice. I learned that lesson once, and I won't learn it again. He'd meant loss. He'd meant that caring for people led to pain. She understood that better than she wanted to. He's raising his nephew Tommy now, Kate continued. Boy's parents died in a mining accident a year back. Jonah's all the family he's got left. Does his best, but he's not exactly warm, you know? Tommy needs more than cold efficiency. Then why did Cain target him with that letter? Cain wanted to buy Jonah's land, made a good offer. Jonah refused. So Cain's been making his life difficult ever since. Stealing contracts, spreading rumors, stupid pranks like that letter, trying to force Jonah to sell. Why does Cain want the land so badly? Kate paused, thinking. Water, probably. Jonah's property backs onto Silver Creek. Only reliable water source on that end of town. Control the water, control who can run a mill. Cain wants a monopoly. Politics and power and men playing games with other people's lives. Lily had left Philadelphia to escape exactly that. Apparently, geography didn't matter. The game was the same everywhere. They finished the dishes as the sky outside turned purple with dusk. Kate showed Lily to her room, a tiny attic space with a sloped ceiling and a narrow bed. Simple, but clean. The window looked out over the main street, now quiet as the town settled in for the night. "Get some rest," Kate said from the doorway. "Tomorrow you can start asking around about work. I'll spread the word you're looking. Someone will need help, especially someone willing to stand up to Cain." "Thank you, Kate, for everything." The older woman waved it off. "We women have to stick together. Lord knows nobody else will look out for us." After she left, Lily sat on the bed and finally let herself feel the weight of the day, the fear, the disappointment, the exhaustion. She pulled Clara's coat from her bag and held it close, breathing in the faint scent of lavender. "I don't know what I'm doing," she whispered to the empty room. "I don't know how to survive this." But even as she said it, she knew she would find a way, because the alternative was going back to Philadelphia, back to Henry, back to being nothing and nobody. And she'd rather die in Colorado than live like that. Tomorrow she'd find work. Tomorrow she'd start rebuilding. Tomorrow she'd figure out how to turn 11 cents into a future. Tonight, she just needed to sleep. Lily lay down, still holding Clara's coat, and closed her eyes. Outside, the mountains stood silent under the stars. Somewhere in the darkness, a wolf howled. The sound was lonely and wild, and somehow comforting. She was still here, still breathing, still fighting. That would have to be enough. Morning came cold and bright. Lily woke to sunlight streaming through the attic window and the smell of coffee drifting up from the kitchen below. For a moment she forgot where she was, forgot everything that had happened. Then reality crashed back and she groaned. Colorado, Silverwood, 11 cents and nowhere to go. She dressed quickly in her second dress, dark green wool that was slightly less worn than yesterday's outfit, braided her hair into something respectable, ignored the way her stomach cramped with hunger. She'd eaten last night at least. That was more than she'd had some days in Philadelphia. Downstairs, Kate was already cooking breakfast for the boarders, eggs and bacon and fresh bread that made Lily's mouth water. Kate jerked her head toward a plate set aside. "Eat fast. Then I need you to run some deliveries for me. Mended linens for 3 of the businesses in town. You'll meet people. They'll see you're willing to work. Maybe lead to something more permanent." Lily ate standing up, shoveling food with the kind of desperate speed that came from never knowing when the next meal might arrive. The eggs were perfect, the bacon crispy, the bread still warm. It was the best thing she'd tasted in months. Kate handed her a basket loaded with neatly folded linens. "First stop is Tom's Smithy, end of Main Street. He's a good man, known him for years. Then Doc Cross's office, 2nd floor above the general store. Last is the saloon, but watch yourself there. Some of the morning drinkers get handsy. I can handle myself." "I believe you, but take this anyway." Kate pressed something into her hand. A small folding knife, the kind ladies carried for cutting thread. But the blade was sharp, recently honed. Just in case, Lily pocketed the knife, feeling its weight like a promise. "Thank you." The morning air was crisp, touched with pine and the promise of autumn. Silverwood looked different in daylight, less threatening, more tired. Just another town full of people trying to get by. The businesses were opening, shopkeepers sweeping porches, setting out their wares. Tom's smithy was exactly where Kate said, a stone building with a forge already glowing red-hot. The ring of hammer on anvil echoed down the street. Lily pushed through the open door into heat and smoke and the smell of hot metal. An old man stood at the forge, white-haired and bent with age, but his arms were still thick with muscle and his strikes were sure and steady. He looked up as she entered, eyes sharp under bushy eyebrows. "Help you, miss?" "Delivery from Kate Murphy." Lily held up the basket. "Mended linens." "Ah, good. Set them over there." He pointed to a clean bench near the door. "Kate does fine work. Tell her I said so." Lily set down the basket, but something made her pause. The smithy was full of tools, racks of horseshoes, and nails and pieces of ironwork waiting to be finished. But what caught her eye was a small chest sitting on the workbench half completed. The metalwork was beautiful, delicate hinges, and a lockplate decorated with scrollwork. "That's lovely," she said without thinking. Tom glanced at the chest, then back at her. "Been working on it for months. It's for my granddaughter, her wedding present. But I can't get the wood parts right. I'm good with iron, not so much with carpentry." Lily moved closer, studying the chest. The metalwork was perfect, but the wooden panels were rough, poorly fitted. Gaps showed where the pieces joined. Any moisture would warp it. "The panels need to be rabbited," she said, running her finger along the joint. "Cut a groove so they fit together tighter, and sealed. Otherwise, humidity will make them swell." Tom's eyebrows rose. "You know carpentry?" Too late, Lily realized her mistake. Ladies weren't supposed to know about joints and grooves. Ladies were supposed to know needlework and cooking. But the words were already out. "My father was a carpenter. He taught me." "Did he now?" Tom set down his hammer, giving her his full attention. "Not many women learn the trade. Not many fathers treat their daughters like sons." Lily met his gaze steadily. "But mine did. He said good work doesn't care about the hands that make it." Something shifted in Tom's expression. Approval, maybe, or recognition of a kindred spirit. "Your father sounds like a wise man." "He was, before he died and left me with nothing." The bitterness in her own voice surprised her. She hadn't meant to be so honest, so raw, but Tom just nodded like he understood. "That's the way of the world, innit? The good ones die and the bastards live forever." He turned back to the chest. "You think you could fix this, the wooden parts? I'd pay fair." Lily's heart jumped. Work. Real work, using the skills her father had taught her. "I could try, but I don't have tools." "I know someone who does, someone who owes me a favor." Tom smiled, and it transformed his weathered face. "Leave this with me. I'll talk to Jonah Stone, see if he'll let you use his workshop for a few hours. In exchange, I'll fix that plow blade he's been putting off." "Jonah Stone won't want to help me." Lily thought about yesterday, about the flat rejection in those gray eyes. "He made it very clear I should stay away. Jonah's a stubborn fool, but he's not cruel, and he respects skill when he sees it." Tom stuck out a gnarled hand. "I'm Tom Fletcher, by the way. Been smithing in this town since before most of these buildings were standing." Lily shook his hand. "Lily Brennan. I'm new here." "Brennan?" Tom's expression changed suddenly. He stared at her, really stared, taking in her features with new intensity. "Brennan from where?" "Philadelphia. My father was Michael Brennan. He had a carpentry business there." The color drained from Tom's face. He gripped the edge of his workbench like he might fall over otherwise. Michael Brennan. Lord have mercy." He gripped the edge of his workbench like he might fall over otherwise. Michael Brennan, Lord have mercy." "You knew him?" "Knew him? Girl, I worked with him. Back before he went east, before he married and had a family. We were partners. Him and me and a man named Isaiah Stone." Isaiah Stone, Jonah's father. Lily felt the world tilt sideways. This wasn't coincidence. This was something bigger, something that connected her father and Jonah's father and this old man in ways she didn't understand yet. "What happened?" she asked. "Why did you split up?" Tom's expression darkened. "That's a long story, and not one I should tell standing in a smithy where anyone could walk in." He glanced toward the street, then back at her. "You trust Kate Murphy?" "I think so." "Then go finish your deliveries. Come back at sundown. I'll tell you everything then." He hesitated, then added softly, "Michael was a good man, best carpenter I ever knew. I'm sorry he's gone. And I'm sorrier still that his daughter ended up in Silverwood with 11 cents and nowhere to turn." "How did you know about the 11 cents?" "Kate told me when she asked me to give you a chance. We look out for each other, those of us who've been here since the beginning. Tom picked up his hammer again. Sundown, Lily Brennan. I'll tell you why your father never spoke of his time in Colorado, and why that might be the most important thing you ever learn. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across Stonewood Carpentry's workshop as Lily swept sawdust into neat piles, her movements careful and deliberate. 3 days had passed since her confrontation with Vincent Cain at the boarding house. 3 days since Tom Fletcher had told her the truth about her father's past in Colorado, about the partnership with Isaiah Stone, about the stolen formula for waterproof varnish that had disappeared the night Isaiah died. 3 days since everything she thought she knew about her father's life had shattered and reformed into something darker, more complicated. And 3 days since Jonah Stone had offered her work in his shop. The offer had come through Tom, delivered with the gruff practicality of a man who understood that pride was expensive and survival was not. Jonah needed help. His nephew Tommy was struggling in school, needed someone to tutor him in reading and arithmetic. The workshop needed cleaning, organizing, someone to handle the small repairs that piled up while Jonah focused on major commissions. $3 a week. Room in the small cabin behind the workshop if she wanted it, though Kate's boarding house was fine if she preferred to stay there. Lily had taken the job, not because she'd forgiven Jonah for his cold rejection, but because $3 was more than she'd make anywhere else in Silverwood, and because something in her father's story demanded she stay close to this place, to this man whose father had once been her father's partner. The workshop still smelled of fresh-cut pine and linseed oil, but now Lily knew every corner of it. She knew which tools hung where, knew the difference between white oak and red oak by sight and smell, knew that Jonah worked best in the early morning hours when the light came sideways through the eastern windows. She'd watched him plane boards with a precision that bordered on meditation, watched his hands move with the kind of certainty that came from 20 years of practice. He barely spoke to her. When he did, his words were economical, stripped of anything unnecessary. Move that lumber stack. Tommy needs help with his multiplication tables. The stain is in the cabinet by the door. He treated her like a piece of equipment, useful but unremarkable. And somehow that was worse than hostility. Hostility at least acknowledged she existed as a person rather than a function, but Tommy was different. The boy had attached himself to Lily within hours of her arrival, following her around the workshop with questions that tumbled out faster than she could answer them. Why did wood split along the grain? How did you know which chisel to use? Could she really read blueprints like Uncle Jonah said? His enthusiasm was infectious, reminding her of Clara before the consumption had stolen her sister's energy along with her breath. She'd been helping Tommy with his schoolwork every afternoon, sitting at the scarred workbench while he practiced his letters and struggled through simple arithmetic. The boy was bright but restless, his attention wandering to the workshop activities whenever Jonah started a new project. Lily understood. Numbers on a slate couldn't compete with the magic of transformation that happened when raw lumber became furniture. Now she set aside the broom and moved to the project that had occupied her spare moments for the past 3 days. Tom's wedding chest sat on a corner bench, the metalwork gleaming where she'd polished it, the wooden panels finally fitted properly after hours of careful work. She'd rabbited the joints like she'd suggested, sealed the interior with a thin coat of linseed oil, and added small corner braces to prevent warping. It was good work. Her father would have approved. The sound of the plane stopped. Lily looked up to find Jonah watching her from across the workshop, his gray eyes unreadable in the afternoon light. He set down his tool and crossed to the bench, moving with the unhurried confidence of a man completely at ease in his own space. He studied the chest for a long moment, running his fingers over the joints she'd cut, testing the fit of the panels. His expression remained neutral, but something shifted in his posture. A loosening, slight but noticeable. "This is quality work," he said finally. "Better than quality. This is the kind of joinery most men can't master in a lifetime. My father was a good teacher. Your father was a master craftsman. Jonah's voice carried a weight that hadn't been there before. Tom showed me some of the old plans, the projects they worked on together. Michael Brennan had a gift. Looks like he passed it on. It was the first real compliment he'd given her, the first acknowledgement that she was more than just hired help. Lily felt something tight in her chest ease slightly. Tom told me about the partnership, she said carefully, about what happened to your father. Jonah's expression hardened immediately, walls slamming back into place. Tom talks too much. He thought I should know, since my father was involved. Your father left, went back east and started a new life. Smart move. Jonah turned away from the chest, from her, his shoulders rigid. Nothing good came from staying in Colorado. What happened the night your father died? Accident at the workshop. A support beam fell. That's what the inquest said. His voice was flat, emotionless, but his hands curled into fists at his sides. My father was crushed, dead before anyone could get help. I was 19, suddenly responsible for a failing business and no idea how to run it. Tom doesn't think it was an accident. Tom thinks a lot of things, doesn't make them true. Jonah grabbed his coat from a peg by the door. I'm going to the lumber yard. Keep an eye on Tommy. Make sure he finishes that reading assignment. He was gone before she could respond, the door swinging shut behind him with controlled force. Not quite a slam, but close. Lily stared after him, frustration warring with understanding. The man was a fortress, every vulnerability locked away behind stone walls and careful silence. But she'd seen the way his hands had tightened, seen the flash of old pain in those gray eyes. He believed it was murder too. He just couldn't afford to admit it. The cabin door opened and Tommy bounded in, his school slate tucked under one arm, his face flushed from running. Miss Lily, I finished the reading, all 10 pages like you said. Can I help in the workshop now, please? Lily smiled despite her troubled thoughts. Show me the slate first. Let's see if you understood what you read. They spent the next hour going over the reading assignment, a story about the Oregon Trail that Tommy found infinitely more interesting than the arithmetic problems he'd been struggling with yesterday. His comprehension was good, his questions intelligent. He just needed someone to pay attention, to care whether he learned or not. When they finished, Tommy looked up at her with an expression so hopeful it made her throat tight. Uncle Jonah never reads with me. He says I should study on my own, that men need to be self-sufficient. But it's easier when you help. Is that wrong? There's nothing wrong with accepting help, Tommy. The strongest people I've ever known were the ones who understood they couldn't do everything alone. Uncle Jonah tries to do everything alone, ever since Aunt Anna died. Lily had heard the story from Kate, Jonah's wife Anna, and their 4-year-old daughter Ruth, both dead from scarlet fever within days of each other 3 years ago. Jonah had been in Denver buying specialty lumber for a church commission, the kind of contract that could make or break a small carpentry business. By the time he got the telegram and rushed home, they were already buried. He'd never forgiven himself for being gone, for choosing work over family in what turned out to be their last days. Your uncle carries a heavy burden, Lily said quietly. Sometimes grief makes people build walls. It's not that he doesn't love you, Tommy. He just doesn't know how to show it anymore. Do you think he'll ever be happy again? The question was so earnest, so full of childish hope, that happiness was achievable through simple wanting. Lily wished she could promise it would happen, but she'd learned too young that the world didn't work that way. I think he's trying, she said instead. Sometimes that's all any of us can do. Tommy nodded solemnly, then brightened. Can I practice my joinery now? I want to make a box like the one you fixed for Mr. Tom. They worked together for the next hour, Tommy carefully cutting pieces of scrap wood under Lily's supervision, while she coached him through the basics of measuring twice and cutting once. The boy had natural aptitude, his hands steady despite his youth. Given time and training, He could be an excellent carpenter. The sun was setting when Jonah returned, his wagon loaded with fresh lumber. He pulled up to the workshop doors and began unloading, his movements efficient despite the weight of the boards. Lily moved to help without being asked, taking one end of a 12-foot plank while he took the other. They worked in silence, stacking the lumber by type and grade. It was white pine mostly, good quality boards with straight grain and few knots. The kind of wood that would plane smooth as glass and take stain beautifully. Lily ran her hand over one board, feeling the texture, the subtle variations that told her this tree had grown slowly in rich soil, probably on a north-facing slope where the sunlight was indirect. "You can read wood," Jonah observed. It wasn't a question. "My father taught me. He said every piece of lumber has a story. Where it grew, how fast, what kind of life it had before it was cut. Good carpenters listen to those stories. Your father was right." Jonah set down the last board and straightened, wincing slightly. His back was bothering him, she realized. Too many years of heavy labor taking their toll. "There's liniment in Kate's kitchen," Lily said. "For sore muscles. I could bring some tomorrow. I'm fine." "You're not. You're favoring your left side, and you winced when you bent to stack that last board." She met his gaze steadily. "Pride doesn't make pain go away, Mr. Stone. It just makes you suffer longer." For a moment she thought he'd dismiss her again, retreat behind those walls of silence. But then something unexpected happened. He smiled. Just a slight curve of his mouth, gone almost as quickly as it appeared, but unmistakable. "You're persistent," he said. "I'll give you that. I learned from the best. My father never gave up on anything, even when he should have." The smile faded, replaced by something more serious. "Tom told me what happened in Philadelphia. About your stepfather, about your sister. I'm sorry. Losing a child is the worst kind of pain." The sympathy in his voice was genuine, unguarded. For the first time since she'd met him, Jonah Stone sounded fully human, fully present. Not hiding behind efficiency or emotional distance. "Thank you," Lily said softly. "I'm sorry about your wife and daughter, too. Kate told me. I can't imagine what that must have been like." "It was like drowning," Jonah said, so quietly she almost didn't hear him. "Every day for a year, just trying to remember how to breathe." He cleared his throat, embarrassed by his own honesty. "The liniment. Yes, if you could bring some, that would be helpful." It was a small concession, a tiny crack in the fortress walls, but it felt like progress. That night, Lily walked back to Kate's boarding house through streets lit by oil lamps and the last purple light of dusk. The mountains loomed dark against the sky, their peaks still touched with snow that glowed faintly in the twilight. The air smelled of wood smoke and approaching autumn, crisp enough to make her pull her shawl tighter. She was thinking about Jonah's words, about drowning and breathing and the different ways grief could destroy a person, when she heard footsteps behind her, quick, purposeful footsteps that didn't match the lazy pace of an evening stroll. Lily's hand went to the small knife Kate had given her, the blade hidden in the folds of her skirt. She didn't turn around, didn't acknowledge she'd noticed, just kept walking at the same steady pace while her heart hammered against her ribs. The footsteps got closer. A man's voice, smooth and cultured and instantly recognizable, called out behind her. "Miss Brennan, working late at the carpenter's shop, I see. How industrious." Vincent Cain. Of course. Lily stopped but didn't turn around. "What do you want, Mr. Cain?" "Just to talk." He moved into her peripheral vision, hands in his pockets, his expensive suit somehow staying clean despite the dust of the street. "I feel we got off on the wrong foot the other night. I'd like to make amends." "We didn't get off on any foot. You played a cruel joke that cost me everything I had, and when I called you on it, you threatened me. There's nothing to amend." Cain's smile was all teeth, no warmth. "Still angry about that little letter? Come now. It was just a bit of fun. How was I to know you'd actually come all this way?" "Because that was the point. You wanted to humiliate Jonah Stone, and you didn't care who got hurt in the process." Jonah Stone is a stubborn fool who refuses to see reason. I made him a fair offer for his land, more than fair, and he turned it down. Sometimes men need encouragement to make smart business decisions. And sometimes men need to learn that not everything is for sale. Lily finally turned to face him fully. What do you really want, Mr. Cain? Because I don't believe you followed me here just to chat about business philosophy. Cain's expression shifted, the false friendliness dropping away to reveal something harder underneath. I want you to stop working for Stone. You're a talented woman, Miss Brennan. Wasting your skills in that sad little workshop is beneath you. Come work for me. I'll pay you $10 a week, set you up in a proper house. All you have to do is convince Stone to sell me his property. You want me to spy for you. I want you to be practical. Stone's business is failing. He's one bad season away from bankruptcy. Why should you go down with that ship when you could have security, comfort, a real future? Cain moved closer, his voice dropping to something almost intimate. I take care of the people who work for me, Lily. I could take very good care of you. The implication was clear, and it made her skin crawl. The answer is no. Think about it before you refuse. Winter's coming. $10 a week could mean the difference between comfort and freezing in some drafty cabin, between eating well and going hungry. His smile turned cruel. Between having protection and being vulnerable to all the dangers a woman alone might face in a rough town like this. It was a threat, barely veiled. Lily felt anger spike hot and bright in her chest. I've faced worse than you, Mr. Cain. Men who thought money and power meant they owned the world. Men who learned they were wrong. She stepped closer to him, eliminating the space he'd been using to intimidate. I'm not interested in your money or your protection or whatever else you think you're offering. And if you threaten me again, I'll make sure everyone in Silverwood knows exactly what kind of man you are. Cain's face darkened. Careful, girl. You're making enemies you can't afford. Then I'll be in good company, because from what I hear, half this town already hates you. They're just too scared to say it out loud. Lily turned away from him, dismissing him deliberately. Stay away from me, Mr. Cain, and stay away from Jonah Stone, or you'll regret it. She walked away before he could respond, her heart pounding so hard she thought he must hear it. Half expected him to grab her, to make good on his veiled threats right there in the street. But he didn't. When she glanced back from the boarding house steps, he was still standing in the middle of the road, watching her with an expression that promised this wasn't over. Kate was waiting in the kitchen when Lily came in, a cup of coffee already poured. The older woman took one look at Lily's face and said, Cain? How did you know? Because you've got that look women get when a man's just reminded them how dangerous the world can be. Kate pushed the coffee across the table. What did he want? Lily told her about the offer, about the threats, about the implication that winter in Silverwood could be very difficult for a woman without protection. Kate listened without interrupting, her expression growing darker with each detail. When Lily finished, Kate was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, That man killed my son. I can't prove it, but I know it in my bones the same way I knew Walter was dead before they brought his body home. Cain doesn't make idle threats, Lily. If he's warning you about winter, he means it. He'll make sure you can't find work anywhere in town, make sure every door closes in your face. Then I'll work for Jonah. Cain can't control everything. No, but he can make things difficult. Steal contracts, damage property, spread rumors. Kate wrapped her hands around her own coffee cup. I'm not telling you to give up. Lord knows I admire your spine, but I need you to understand what you're up against. Vincent Cain is the kind of man who destroys anyone who stands in his way. Then maybe it's time someone stood in his way who refuses to be destroyed. Kate studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Maybe you're right. Maybe that's exactly what this town needs. She reached across the table and squeezed Lily's hand. But promise me you'll be careful. No heroics, no taking stupid risks. We fight smart, not reckless. I promise. But even as she said it, Lily wondered if it was a promise she could keep. because there was something bigger happening here, something that connected her father's past to Jonah's present, something that involved stolen formulas and convenient accidents and men who got away with murder. And she was starting to think that maybe she hadn't come to Silverwood by accident at all. Maybe her father's ghost had led her here for a reason. The next morning, Lily arrived at the workshop early before Jonah or Tommy were awake. She'd brought the liniment Kate had mixed, a foul-smelling concoction of camphor and arnica that worked better than anything you could buy at the general store. But she'd also brought something else. The letter that had brought her to Colorado, which she'd studied again last night by lamplight. The handwriting was good, practiced, but under close examination she could see the subtle hesitations, the places where the writer had copied someone else's style rather than writing naturally. It was a skilled forgery, but a forgery nonetheless. And there was something about the paper itself, a slight water stain in one corner, that looked familiar. She was examining the stain when the workshop door opened and Jonah walked in, surprised to find her already there. He looked tired, she realized. Shadows under his eyes suggested another sleepless night. "You're early," he said. "I brought the liniment, and I wanted to look at something in good light." She held up the letter. "This paper, does it look familiar to you?" Jonah took the letter, frowning. He held it up to the window, studying it the way he'd study a piece of wood for hidden flaws. His expression changed, tightening. "This is from my office. I have a stack of this exact paper, same manufacturer's mark." He pointed to a faint watermark visible when backlit. "Cain must have stolen it when he was here last month looking at a cabinet commission. I thought some sheets were missing, but I figured I'd miscounted." "So he broke into your office, stole your stationery, forged a letter, and sent it to Philadelphia." Lily felt her anger building again. "That's a lot of effort just to embarrass you. Why go to such lengths?" "Because he wants me desperate enough to sell. He's been applying pressure for months now. Lost contracts, damaged lumber, tools gone missing. Small things that add up." Jonah handed back the letter, his jaw tight. "But using you like that, bringing an innocent woman into this mess, that crosses a line even for Cain. He approached me last night, offered me $10 a week to spy on you, to convince you to sell." Jonah's eyes went hard. "He threatened you?" "Implied that winter might be difficult if I didn't cooperate, suggested I might need protection." Lily met his gaze. "I told him no, and I told him to stay away from both of us." That was dangerous, but there was something like respect in Jonah's voice. "Cain doesn't take rejection well." "Neither do I." Lily pulled out the bundle of old papers Tom had given her yesterday, plans and diagrams her father had drawn 30 years ago. "Tom told me about the waterproof varnish formula your father and mine developed. He thinks someone stole it the night your father died. I think he's right, and I think I know who has it." Jonah took the papers slowly, spreading them across the workbench. They were architectural plans for a covered bridge, annotated with notes about wood treatment and weatherproofing. In the margins, 2 different hands had written formulas, chemical compounds, ratios of oils and resins. "I've never seen these before," Jonah said quietly. "My father's workshop burned down a week after he died. I thought everything was lost. Tom saved what he could. He's been keeping them safe, waiting for the right time." Lily pointed to one of the formulas. "This is the waterproof varnish. See how it's incomplete? Someone tore away the bottom of the page. The final mixture ratios are missing." Jonah studied the torn edge, then looked up at her with understanding dawning in his eyes. "You think whoever killed my father took the rest of the formula?" "I think someone wanted to profit from your father's and mine's work without having to share credit or money. I think they staged an accident, stole the formula, and disappeared with it." Lily pulled out another paper, this one more recent. "And I think they're still in Silverwood. It was a receipt from Cain Lumber dated 6 months ago. Payment for a shipment of treated timber, guaranteed waterproof, using a proprietary varnish developed exclusively by Cain Industries. The price was 3 times standard rates." Jonah's hands trembled slightly as he held the receipt. "He's been selling it. All this time Cain has been profiting from my father's work." not Cain. He's too young, wasn't even in Silverwood when your father died. Lily showed him one more document, a land deed transfer. But his business partner was Gerald Pike, Councilman Pike, who owns half of Cain Lumber and who was working as a carpenter's assistant 30 years ago when this all happened. The pieces were falling into place, a puzzle that had waited 3 decades to be solved. Gerald Pike, a poor laborer who'd suddenly had money to buy property and influence a year after Isaiah Stone's death. Vincent Cain, his protege and business partner, benefiting from a stolen formula without even knowing its true origin. "We need proof," Jonah said finally. "Real proof, not just speculation. The formula itself, records showing Pike stole it, something that would hold up in court." "Pike probably keeps important documents at his office in town. That's where we should start." "That's breaking and entering. If we're caught, we'll go to jail. Cain owns the sheriff." Jonah set down the papers, his expression troubled. "I appreciate what you're trying to do, Lily, but I can't ask you to take that risk." "You're not asking. I'm volunteering." She held his gaze steadily. "My father was part of this partnership. His work was stolen too. This isn't just about your family's justice. It's about mine. Your father left. He walked away from all of this. Maybe he didn't have a choice. Maybe he was threatened or scared or knew he couldn't fight men with more power." Lily's voice was fierce now. "But I'm not walking away. I'm not leaving good men to be destroyed by criminals who think money makes them untouchable." Something shifted in Jonah's expression. The walls he'd been maintaining so carefully cracked open, revealing the man underneath. Tired, grieving, but not broken. Not yet. "Your father taught you carpentry," he said quietly. "But someone else taught you to fight. Who was that?" "Life," Lily said. "Life taught me that if you don't fight for yourself, nobody else will, and that sometimes the only justice you get is the justice you take." Jonah nodded slowly. "All right, we'll do this together, but carefully, planned out properly. We get one chance at this. If we fail, Cain and Pike will bury us. Then we won't fail." They spent the rest of the morning planning, sketching out Pike's schedule, identifying when his office would be empty, determining what they needed to find. Tommy sensed something was different, kept glancing at them with curious eyes, but he didn't ask questions. Just worked on his reading assignment and practiced his joinery, content to be near the adults even if he didn't understand what they were doing. It was late afternoon when Kate arrived, her expression grim. "We've got trouble. Cain's filing a complaint with the town council, says Jonah's workshop is a fire hazard, demands an inspection. He's got 3 other business owners signing on to it." "Let me guess," Jonah said. "All 3 owe Cain money. Or have contracts with him, same difference." Kate glanced at Lily. "He's moving faster than I expected. Usually Cain takes his time destroying people. You must have really gotten under his skin." "When's the inspection?" Lily asked. 3 days. And if they find violations, they can shut down the workshop until repairs are made, repairs that would cost more money than Jonah has." Kate's expression was sympathetic. "I'm sorry. I know you've been working hard to make things right here." 3 days. Not enough time to find proof against Pike. Not enough time to expose the truth. Cain was forcing their hand, making them choose between losing everything or taking desperate action. Jonah looked at Lily, and in his eyes she saw the question he couldn't ask out loud. "Are you sure? Are you really willing to risk everything for this?" She nodded once. A small gesture, but definitive. "Tonight, then," Jonah said quietly. "We search Pike's office tonight, before the inspection happens. It's our only chance." Kate looked between them, understanding dawning on her face. "Lord have mercy, you're actually going to do it." "You don't have to be involved," Lily told her. "The less you know, the safer you are." "I've been safe for 5 years," Kate said grimly. "Ever since my boy died and I decided not to make waves, not to ask questions. Safe and miserable and watching Cain destroy this town piece by piece." She pulled off her apron with decisive movements. "I'm done being safe. Tell me what you need." And so they planned a burglary, three people bound together by grief and anger, and the slim hope that justice might still be possible in a world that seemed designed to protect powerful men and crush everyone else. As the sun set over the Rockies, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold, Lily felt something shift inside her. She'd come to Silverwood with nothing, running from a past she couldn't change. But maybe she'd found something here worth staying for, worth fighting for. Not just her father's legacy or Jonah's business or even her own survival, but the truth. Simple and dangerous and absolutely necessary. The truth that some ghosts demanded to be heard, and that sometimes the living owed it to the dead to finish what they'd started. Midnight in Silverwood came with a silence so complete it felt like the world was holding its breath. Lily crouched in the alley behind the town hall, her dark dress blending into shadows while her heart hammered against her ribs with enough force to crack bone. Beside her, Jonah checked his pocket watch for the third time in as many minutes, his face pale in the moonlight filtering between buildings. Kate was positioned at the end of the alley, watching the street for the night watchman who made his rounds every hour. She'd dressed in black like they had, her gray hair tucked under a dark scarf, looking more like a bandit than a respectable boarding house owner. In her hand she carried a small bell, their agreed signal if anyone approached. The plan was simple, which made it terrifying. Gerald Pike's office occupied the second floor of the town hall, accessible by an external staircase that creaked loud enough to wake the dead. But Lily had noticed during her deliveries that Pike's window didn't lock properly, the frame warped from years of mountain weather. A person could slip through if they were small enough and desperate enough. She qualified on both counts. Jonah touched her shoulder, his hand warm through the fabric of her dress. Last chance to back out. Say the word and we leave right now. Find another way. There is no other way. Lily's voice was steady, despite the fear crawling up her spine. In 3 days, they'll shut down your workshop. By the time you reopen, assuming you can afford repairs, Cain will have stolen every contract you had. This is our only chance to stop him. If you're caught, you'll go to jail. Cain owns the sheriff. There won't be a fair trial. Then I won't get caught. She met his eyes, saw her own determination reflected back. Trust me, Jonah. I've been underestimated my whole life. It's actually an advantage. Something flickered across his face, an emotion she couldn't quite name. Respect maybe, or concern, or something deeper that neither of them had words for yet. Then he nodded once and gestured toward the building. They moved together through the darkness, keeping to the deepest shadows, making no sound on the packed dirt of the alley. The external staircase loomed above them, wooden steps worn smooth by decades of use. Lily tested the first step carefully, feeling it shift under her weight with a groan that seemed loud as thunder. She froze, waited. No lights appeared in windows, no doors opened, no voices called out. The town remained sleeping, unaware of the burglary about to unfold in its heart. Step by careful step, Lily climbed. Each board protested, each nail squeaked, but she distributed her weight evenly, the way her father had taught her when they'd worked on old structures together. Test before you trust. Move with the wood, not against it. Listen to what the building tells you. The building told her it was old and tired and ready to give up her secrets. Pike's window was exactly as she remembered, the frame swollen on one side, leaving a gap wide enough to slip fingers through. Lily worked her carpentry knife into the space, levering gently until the latch gave way with a soft click. The window swung inward on hinges that needed oiling, the sound like a whisper in the night. She looked back down at Jonah. He stood at the base of the stairs, his face turned up to watch her, one hand resting on the knife at his belt, ready to fight if it came to that, ready to protect her, even though she'd told him protection wasn't what she needed. Lily climbed through the window into Gerald Pike's private office. The room smelled of cigar smoke and old paper, moonlight through the window providing just enough illumination to see basic shapes. A large desk dominated the center, its surface covered with neat stacks of documents. Filing cabinets lined one wall. A safe sat in the corner, small but solid, the kind that would take an expert cracksman to open. She started with the desk, moving carefully, touching nothing that didn't need to be touched. The drawers were unlocked, which surprised her until she realized that Pike's arrogance was his weakness. He didn't expect anyone to challenge him, didn't believe anyone in Silverwood had the courage or capability to invade his private space. He was about to learn otherwise. The first drawer held routine correspondence, business letters, invoices, nothing useful. The second contained personal items, a flask of expensive whiskey, cigars from Cuba, a leather-bound journal. Lily opened the journal, tilting it toward the moonlight to read Pike's cramped handwriting. The entries were brief, dated, mostly mundane notes about meetings and business transactions. But as she flipped backward through the pages, deeper into the past, the tone changed. The entries became longer, more personal, tinged with bitterness and ambition. February 1858. Isaiah Stone treats me like a servant, never acknowledging my contributions to the partnership. He and Brennan take all the credit while I do all the labor. They'll regret dismissing me. June 1858. The waterproof varnish is nearly perfected. Stone and Brennan are fools, too focused on the carpentry to see the real fortune here. That formula could be worth thousands. Someone with vision could build an empire on it. September 1858. Tonight, I make my move. Stone will be working late at the mill, the others gone home. An accident, easily staged. And when the dust settles, I'll have what should have been mine from the beginning. Lily's hands shook as she read the final entry, dated the day after Isaiah Stone's death. September 14th, 1858. It's done. Stone is dead. The formula is mine. Brennan suspects but cannot prove anything. He'll leave town soon enough. The coward hasn't the stomach for justice. In a year, I'll return with money, buy property, become respectable. No one will question how a poor carpenter suddenly became wealthy. They never do. It was a confession, written in Pike's own hand, detailing his murder of Isaiah Stone and theft of the varnish formula. Exactly the proof they needed. Lily carefully tore out the relevant pages, folding them into her bodice. Then she continued searching, looking for the formula itself, the missing piece that would complete the evidence. It had to be here somewhere, hidden but accessible. Pike was the kind of man who'd want to gloat over his ill-gotten gains. The filing cabinets revealed business records, deeds, contracts. Years of accumulated paperwork that documented Pike's rise from laborer to councilman. She was about to give up when her fingers brushed something odd, a false back in one of the drawers. She pressed on it, heard a click, and a hidden compartment sprang open. Inside lay a thin sheaf of papers, yellowed with age. Chemical formulas written in two different hands, one she recognized as similar to her father's careful printing, the other presumably Isaiah Stone's. Instructions for mixing resins and oils and additives in precise ratios to create a varnish that would protect wood from moisture damage for decades. The missing piece, the stolen treasure that had cost Isaiah Stone his life and driven Michael Brennan back to Philadelphia in fear and grief. Lily was tucking the papers into her bodice alongside the journal pages when she heard it. Footsteps in the hallway outside. Heavy, deliberate, accompanied by the jingle of keys. Someone was coming. Her heart stopped, then started again at double speed. She looked at the window, calculating distances. Could she make it out and down the stairs before whoever it was entered the office? The lock was already turning, the door starting to open. No time, no escape. Lily did the only thing she could. She dropped to the floor and rolled under the massive desk, pulling herself into the small space between the furniture and the wall. Drew her knees to her chest, made herself as small as possible, and prayed the darkness would hide her. The door swung fully open. Lamplight flooded the room, destroying the protective shadows. Footsteps entered, confident and unhurried. A man's voice, cultured and familiar, spoke with casual authority. "I know someone's been in here, Pike. The window's open and you're too paranoid to leave it that way." Vincent Cain. Of course it was Cain. Lily pressed her hand over her mouth to muffle her breathing, her other hand reaching for the small knife in her pocket. Another set of footsteps, older, slower. Gerald Pike's voice, raspy from years of cigar smoke. "You're imagining things. Who would dare break into my office? Everyone in this town knows better. Everyone except that Brennan woman." Cain moved closer to the desk. Lily could see his expensive boots through the narrow gap between floor and furniture. "She's been asking questions, Tom Fletcher's been showing her old documents, and Jonah Stone's been spending more time with her than any woman since Anna died. They're planning something. The girl's nothing, a mail-order bride who didn't even get married. She'll leave town as soon as she saves enough money." "I don't think so." Cain's boots turned, pacing. "I offered her $10 a week to work for me. Good money, more than she'll see anywhere else. She turned me down flat, looked at me like I was something she'd scrape off her shoe. Women like that are dangerous, Pike. They've got nothing to lose and everything to prove." Pike laughed, a sound like gravel in a bucket. "You're getting paranoid in your old age, Vincent. One woman can't hurt us. We control this town. The sheriff, the council, half the businesses. Even if she found something, who would she tell? Who would believe her? I would have said the same thing about my forged letter, that no one would actually come all the way from Philadelphia based on a fake proposal. But she did." Cain's voice hardened. "Don't underestimate her. That mistake could cost us everything. Then perhaps we should remove the problem. Accidents happen in mountain towns. Women traveling alone can disappear without much fuss." Lily's blood turned to ice. They were discussing her murder as casually as men might discuss the weather. And from their tone, this wasn't the first time they'd had such a conversation. How many other people had been removed when they became inconvenient to Cain and Pike's schemes? "Not yet," Cain said. "She's working for Stone. If she disappears, he'll know we're responsible. Better to discredit her first. Make sure no one believes anything she says. Then if she has to vanish, it'll look like she ran off in shame." "How do you plan to discredit her?" "Leave that to me. I've already spread word that she's sharing Stone's bed, that the tutoring Tommy story is a cover for something more sordid. Give it a few days, and her reputation will be destroyed. No one listens to a fallen woman." They were still talking, planning her destruction with clinical efficiency, when Lily heard a new sound, distant but distinct, the soft ring of a bell. Kate's warning signal. The night watchman was coming. Cain heard it too. "We should go. Don't want to explain why we're here at this hour." "My office, Vincent. I can be here whenever I want." "With the window open? After someone clearly broke in? Use your head, old man. We leave now. Check the street, see if anyone's lurking. Tomorrow we secure this place properly." Their footsteps moved toward the door. The lamplight withdrew. Lily heard the lock click, plunging the room back into darkness. Then their voices faded down the hallway, arguing about security measures and the best way to ruin her reputation. She waited, counting to 100 before moving. Her muscles screamed from being cramped in the small space, her heart still racing from the close call. But she was alive, and more importantly, she had the evidence folded against her chest. Proof of murder, proof of theft, written in Pike's own arrogant hand. She crawled out from under the desk, every movement careful and silent, crossed to the window and looked out. The alley was empty, Jonah and Kate both gone as planned. They'd seen Cain and Pike approaching, had hidden themselves, were waiting for her to escape on her own. Lily climbed through the window and down the treacherous stairs, not caring now if they creaked. Speed mattered more than silence. She had to get away from here, had to get the evidence somewhere safe before Cain or Pike realized what she'd taken. She was 3 steps from the bottom when a figure stepped out of the shadows, tall, broad-shouldered, moving with the confidence of a man who owned the night. For one terrible moment she thought it was Cain, that he'd circled back And caught her after all. Then the figure spoke in Jonah Stone's voice, rough with worry. "Thank God, I thought they'd found you." Lily practically fell into his arms, her legs suddenly weak with relief. He caught her, held her steady, his hands warm and solid on her shoulders. She could feel his heart beating as fast as her own, could see the fear that had been carved into his face. "I got it," she whispered. "The journal entries, the formula, everything we need." Kate materialized from the darkness, her face pale but determined. "They're at the sheriff's office now, talking to Deputy Morrison. We need to move before they come back to search properly." They ran through the sleeping town, 3 fugitives in the night, carrying evidence of a 30-year-old murder that powerful men had worked hard to keep buried. Back to the boarding house where Kate's rooms offered temporary sanctuary. Up the stairs to Lily's attic space where they could speak without being overheard. Lily spread the stolen papers across her narrow bed, the lamplight revealing Pike's cramped handwriting and her father's careful formulas. Proof of conspiracy, theft, murder. Everything they needed to bring down Gerald Pike and Vincent Cain, if anyone would listen. "We take this to the marshal in Denver," Jonah said, studying the documents. "Pike owns the local sheriff, but he doesn't control federal law. The marshal's office will have jurisdiction over a murder case this old." "Denver's 3 days away by stage," Kate pointed out. "Cain will know something's wrong the moment Pike discovers these papers missing. They'll come after us before we're halfway there." "Then we don't take the stage. We ride horses, take the mountain trail, faster and harder to follow." Jonah looked at Lily, his expression serious. "But it's dangerous. Early snow in the high passes, risk of bandits, no guarantee we'll even make it. Staying here is more dangerous." Lily thought about Cain's voice, discussing her disappearance like it was inevitable. "They're planning to kill me, Jonah. I heard them. Cain wants to destroy my reputation first, but eventually I'll just vanish like Walter Murphy, and who knows how many others. Going to Denver is a risk, but staying is suicide. Then we leave at first light. Pack light. Take only what we can carry on horseback." Jonah turned to Kate. "You should come with us. Once Cain realizes you helped, he'll make your life hell." Kate shook her head. "Someone needs to stay here. Keep Tommy safe. Make sure Cain doesn't destroy the workshop out of spite. Besides, I'm too old for mountain riding. You two go. Bring back justice for my Walter and Jonah's father and all the others Cain and Pike have hurt over the years." "What about Tommy?" Lily asked. "We can't just leave him." "I'll watch the boy. He can stay here at the boarding house until you return." Kate's expression softened. "He's a good kid. Deserves better than watching another person he loves get destroyed by those bastards." The word loves hung in the air, heavy with implication. Lily glanced at Jonah, saw color rise in his face, saw him look away quickly. Whatever was growing between them, it was still too new, too fragile to examine in the harsh light of crisis. They spent the next hour planning. Routes and supplies, contingencies for different scenarios, what to do if they were caught or separated. Kate contributed a shotgun from her late husband's things, ammunition for both the shotgun and Jonah's rifle. Lily packed her father's tools, unwilling to leave them behind even though they added weight. They were all she had left of Michael Brennan, and somehow having them close felt like having him ride alongside her. As dawn approached, painting the sky in shades of gray and pink, Lily found herself at the window of Jonah's workshop. Tommy was still sleeping in the back room, unaware that the adults were about to leave him. The boy had already lost so much. Parents, stability, the uncle who'd slowly been dying inside since Anna and Ruth's deaths. Now he'd lose them again, even if only temporarily. "He'll understand," Jonah spoke quietly from behind her. "Tommy's stronger than he looks. Stronger than I gave him credit for. He needs you. Not a grieving shell going through the motions, but the real you. The man who taught him joinery and reads him stories about the Oregon Trail when he thinks no one notices. You notice everything." Jonah moved to stand beside her at the window. "It's unsettling." My father used to say that good carpentry is 10% skill and 90% observation. You have to see what's really there, not just what appears to be. She turned to face him fully. I see you, Jonah Stone. The man you were before grief broke you. The man you could be again if you'd let yourself heal. And what do you see? Someone worth saving. Someone worth fighting for. The words came out softer than she'd intended, more honest. Someone who saved me without meaning to, just by giving me a chance when no one else would. Jonah's hand came up, fingers brushing her cheek in a gesture so gentle it made her throat tight. You saved yourself, Lily. You came here with 11 cents and turned it into a future through sheer determination. I just gave you a place to work. You did everything else. We saved each other then. Is that so terrible? No. His voice was rough, weighted with emotion he'd been holding back for 3 years. It's the least terrible thing that's happened to me in a long time. They stood there in the growing light, close enough to kiss, both aware of the moment balanced on a knife's edge. But there was no time, no space for what might happen between them. Not with Pike's confession burning against Lily's skin and Cain's threats still echoing in her memory. When this is over, Jonah said quietly, when we've brought them to justice and it's safe again, I want to court you properly. Take you to dinner in Denver, maybe buy you something pretty that isn't secondhand. Let the whole world know that Lily Rose Brennan is the strongest woman I've ever met. Just to be clear, Lily said, fighting a smile, you're proposing to court me after we've already committed burglary together and are about to flee through the mountains with stolen evidence. Most people do these things in a different order. Most people aren't us. He smiled then, really smiled, and it transformed his face, made him look younger, less burdened. I seem to recall you came to Silverwood for a mail-order marriage that didn't work out. Maybe this time you'll get a proper proposal from a man who actually sent for you. Is that what this is? You sending for me? Retrospectively. His thumb traced her jawline. I didn't know I needed you until you were already here, but now that you are, I can't imagine letting you leave. Then don't. We'll go to Denver together, bring back justice together, and build whatever comes next together. She covered his hand with hers, holding him close. Equal partners, that's what I want. Not someone to save me or protect me, but someone to stand beside me. Equal partners, Jonah agreed. In carpentry, in life, in whatever future we can build from the wreckage of our pasts. The kiss that followed was inevitable, necessary. A promise sealed with touch instead of words. His lips were warm against hers, tasting of coffee and hope, and the possibility of second chances. She leaned into him, feeling the solid strength of his body, the way his arms wrapped around her like he could shield her from every danger the world might throw their way. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, the sun had fully risen. Time to go, time to risk everything on a desperate ride through the mountains in pursuit of justice that might not even exist. But first, Tommy. The boy was awake when they entered his room, sitting up in bed with his slate clutched to his chest. His eyes were red, and Lily realized he'd been crying. He knew. Somehow he knew they were leaving. How long? Tommy's voice was small, younger than his 10 years. How long will you be gone? Week? Maybe 2? Jonah sat on the edge of the bed, his usual emotional distance cracking. We have to go to Denver, Tommy. Important business that can't wait. You're going to stop the bad men, the ones who killed Grandpa Isaiah. Jonah's eyes widened. How did you know about that? I'm not stupid, I hear things. And I know Uncle Vincent isn't really my uncle, that you hate him even though you're always polite. Tommy looked at Lily. Miss Lily found something, didn't she? Something that proves what they did. Yes, Lily said, because lying to children was worse than useless. They always knew anyway. I found proof that Gerald Pike murdered your grandfather and stole something valuable. We're taking that proof to the marshal in Denver so Pike can be arrested. What if they catch you? What if you don't come back? The tears were flowing freely now, a child's terror of abandonment made raw and real. Everyone I love dies or leaves, My parents, Aunt Anna, Cousin Ruth. What if you die too?" Jonah pulled the boy into his arms, holding him tight the way he probably hadn't since Anna's death. "I'm coming back, Tommy, I swear it. I'm coming back because you need me, and because I finally remembered what it feels like to have something worth living for." "You promise?" "I promise. And in the meantime, you'll stay with Kate. She'll take good care of you, and you can help her at the boarding house. Earn your keep like a man." Tommy nodded against Jonah's shoulder, then looked at Lily. "Will you come back too?" "I will. Because I don't break my promises, and I'm promising you right now that I'll be here when you need help with your multiplication tables." She ruffled his hair gently. "Besides, someone has to make sure your uncle doesn't work himself to death in that workshop." A watery smile crossed Tommy's face. "He does work too much. Aunt Anna used to say that too." They left him with Kate an hour later, riding out of Silverwood on 2 sturdy horses borrowed from Tom Fletcher's stable. The old blacksmith had provided the mounts without question, along with enough supplies for a week in the mountains. He'd also pressed something into Lily's hand before they left, a small pistol, old but well-maintained. "Your father would want you protected," Tom had said gruffly, "and so do I. You're Michael Brennan's daughter. That makes you family." Now they rode toward the high country, following a trail that switched back up into pine forests and granite cliffs. The valley fell away behind them, Silverwood growing smaller until it was just a collection of wooden buildings nestled in the trees. Somewhere down there, Cain and Pike were discovering the theft, realizing they'd been outmaneuvered by a woman with 11 cents and a carpenter with nothing left to lose. Let them come, Lily thought. Let them chase us through these mountains. We have the truth, and truth has a way of surviving even when everything else burns. The first day's ride was grueling, the trail steep and treacherous. They stopped only briefly to rest the horses, eating cold food from their saddlebags, speaking little because words felt inadequate to the enormity of what they'd set in motion. By nightfall, they'd climbed above the tree line, making camp on an exposed ridge with views that stretched 50 miles in every direction. Jonah built a small fire while Lily tended the horses, checking their hooves for stones, making sure they had water and grain. The temperature had dropped with the altitude, frost already forming on the rocks around them. Winter was coming early to the high country this year. If they got caught in a storm, they'd freeze to death before Cain's men ever found them. They ate dried venison and hard bread, washing it down with water so cold it made their teeth ache. The fire provided little warmth, just enough to keep their fingers from going numb. Above them, stars filled the sky in numbers impossible to see from the valley below. The Milky Way stretched across the heavens like a river of light. "My father used to bring me up here," Jonah said, staring into the flames. "Back before everything went wrong, he'd point out constellations, tell me stories about the men who'd named them. Said the stars were proof that beauty could exist even in the darkest places." He sounds like he was a good man. The best. Patient, kind, brilliant with wood. He could look at a twisted tree trunk and see the furniture hidden inside, just waiting to be revealed. Jonah's voice was thick with old grief. Pike took that away. Not just his life, but everything he might have created, everyone he might have helped. 30 years of work and wisdom gone because one man was too small to share credit. "We're going to make it right." Lily moved closer, sharing warmth in the freezing air. "Your father's death won't be forgotten or unavenged. Neither will my father's exile or Walter Murphy's murder or any of the others. Pike and Cain will answer for what they've done. And if the marshal doesn't believe us, if 30-year-old journal entries aren't enough proof, then we'll find another way. We'll tell everyone who'll listen until someone acts. We'll make so much noise that Cain and Pike can't hide anymore." She took his hand, lacing their fingers together. "I didn't come this far to give up now. Neither did you." Jonah looked at their joined hands, then up at her face, shadows and firelight turning her features into something ancient and fierce. "How did you get so strong? After everything you've survived, how are you not broken?" "Who says I'm not broken? Maybe I'm just broken in useful ways. broken into pieces that can cut when they need to. She leaned her head against his shoulder. Or maybe I'm tired of being the victim in my own story. Maybe it's time to be the hero instead. They sat like that for a long time, two people held together by shared purpose and growing affection, watching the fire burn down to embers. Eventually, Jonah spread their bedrolls close together, and they slept back to back for warmth, his breathing slow and steady in the mountain silence. Lily dreamed of her father, Michael Brennan, as she remembered him from childhood, standing in his Philadelphia workshop with sawdust in his hair and a smile on his face. He was showing her how to read the grain of wood, how to work with its natural patterns instead of fighting them. And he was saying something, words she couldn't quite hear over the sound of hammering. She woke suddenly to find it wasn't hammering at all. It was hoofbeats. Multiple horses, moving fast, coming up the trail from the valley below. "Jonah," she shook his shoulder urgently, "someone's coming." He was awake instantly, hand going to the rifle beside his bedroll. They both moved to the edge of the ridge, looking down at the switchback trail they'd climbed yesterday. In the pre-dawn gray, she could see them. 5 riders pushing hard, not caring about the dangerous footing or the sleeping horses beneath them. Cain's men. Had to be. No one else would ride through the mountains at this hour with such desperate urgency. "How did they find us so fast?" Lily whispered. "Tom's stable. They must have pressured him, found out he gave us horses." Jonah was already moving, kicking dirt over the fire remnants, gathering their supplies. "We need to move, now. If they catch us out here in the open, we're dead." They saddled the horses with frantic speed, hands clumsy with fear and cold. Behind them, the pursuing riders were closing the distance, their shouts echoing off the granite cliffs. Lily could make out faces now, 5 men she didn't recognize, all carrying rifles, all looking like they'd been promised good money for bringing back fugitives, dead or alive. Probably the latter. Cain would want them alive so he could find out what evidence they'd taken, what they'd shared with others. Jonah led them higher into the mountains, following a trail so narrow their stirrups scraped against rock walls on one side, while empty air yawned on the other. The horses balked, sensing danger, but they pushed forward because stopping meant capture, and capture meant death. Behind them, the pursuit continued. Gunshots cracked in the thin air, bullets whining off stone. The men were shooting to frighten, not to kill, not yet. But that would change once Cain's patience ran out. They rounded a bend and came face to face with a rock slide that had taken out 20 feet of trail, fresh, probably triggered by last night's frost, expanding water in the cracks. The path simply ended, disappearing into a tumble of boulders that led down into darkness. "Can't go around," Jonah said, his voice tight. "It's a 100-foot drop on the right, solid cliff on the left. Then we go through." Lily studied the rock slide, seeing the spaces between boulders, the narrow gaps that might accommodate a horse if the rider had courage and luck. "Single file. You first, then me. If anything happens, if I fall, you keep going. Get that evidence to Denver. Like hell I'm leaving you. Jonah, if we both die here, Pike and Cain win. They get away with everything." She grabbed his arm, forcing him to look at her. "Promise me. If it comes down to it, you save yourself and the evidence. You make sure Tommy doesn't grow up thinking his grandfather was forgotten." The hoofbeats were closer now, the shouts louder. No time left for arguments. "All right," Jonah said finally, "but you're not falling. You're too damn stubborn." He urged his horse forward into the rock slide, the animal picking its way carefully over unstable stone. Twice the footing shifted, sending small avalanches cascading down into the void. But Jonah rode with the skill of a man who'd spent his life in mountains, reading the terrain, trusting his mount's instincts. He made it through to stable trail on the far side. Lily took a deep breath and followed. Her horse was smaller, more nimble, dancing over the rocks with surprising grace. She was halfway across, starting to think they might actually make it, when a gunshot cracked and her horse screamed. The animal stumbled, blood blooming on its shoulder, and suddenly they were falling. Lily kicked free of the stirrups as the horse went down, throwing herself sideways towards solid rock. Her hands found purchase on a narrow ledge, fingers digging into stone, body swinging out over nothing. Below her, the horse tumbled away into darkness, its terrified screams cutting off with sickening finality. "Lily!" Jonah's voice, raw with terror. She couldn't answer, couldn't spare breath for words. All her focus was on holding on not joining the horse in its fatal fall. Her arms were already shaking with effort, fingers slipping on frost-slick stone. Then Jonah was there, lying flat on the edge of the trail, reaching down with both hands. "Grab on, I've got you." She reached up with one hand, felt his fingers close around her wrist like an iron band. He pulled, muscles straining, while she scrambled for footing on the cliff face. Inch by agonizing inch, he hauled her back up to safety. They collapsed together on solid ground, both breathing hard, while behind them Cain's men navigated the rockslide with more caution than Lily had shown. But they were coming, still hunting. "The saddlebags," Lily gasped. "Did you get them?" "Everything important is in mine, but we've only got one horse now." Jonah helped her to her feet, both of them moving on instinct and adrenaline. "We'll have to double up. It'll slow us down. Then we find another way. There has to be a trail they don't know about, something we can use." Lily's mind was racing, thinking about the maps she'd studied in Pike's office, the old mining trails that crisscrossed these mountains. The silver mines, some of them connect through underground passages. If we can reach the Aurora mine before they catch us, we might be able to lose them in the tunnels. Those mines are dangerous. Cave-ins, bad air, vertical shafts with no warning. People die down there. People die up here too. At least underground we have a chance. She swung up behind him on the horse, wrapping her arms around his waist. "Go, east toward Aurora. I'll watch our back." They rode hard through the brightening morning, one horse carrying double, Cain's men slowly but inevitably closing the distance. The trail wound through pine forests and across exposed ridges, always climbing, always testing the limits of what horse and riders could endure. The Aurora mine appeared as they crested a final rise, a collection of abandoned buildings clustered around a dark opening in the mountainside. The mine had been closed for 5 years, played out after a brief silver boom. But the tunnels remained, miles of passages carved through living rock. Lily and Jonah dismounted, slapping the horse's rump to send it running. Better to let the animal escape than have Cain's men capture it and know for certain which direction their quarry had gone. Then they plunged into the mine entrance, swallowed by darkness that smelled of damp stone and old timber. Behind them, gunshots echoed. The hunters had arrived, but ahead lay the labyrinth. And in the darkness, with truth pressed against her heart and a good man by her side, Lily Rose Brennan finally allowed herself to believe they might actually survive this. That justice, so long delayed, might finally have its day. The darkness of the Aurora mine swallowed them whole. Lily's eyes struggled to adjust, seeing nothing but absolute black, broken only by the faint gray rectangle of the entrance behind them, growing smaller with each step. The air was thick with dust and the metallic smell of old ore, cold enough to make her breath visible in the dim light from Jonah's hastily lit lantern. "Stay close," Jonah whispered, his hand finding hers in the darkness. "These tunnels branch everywhere. People have died in here, lost in the maze." Behind them, the shouts of Cain's men echoed off stone walls, distorted by the acoustics until it sounded like 100 voices instead of 5. Lily heard boots on rock, the click of rifle hammers being cocked. They moved deeper into the mountain, Jonah leading with the lantern held high, Lily keeping one hand on the rough-hewn wall to maintain her bearings. The main tunnel split into 3 passages. Jonah chose the middle one without hesitation, as if he knew these mines. "You've been here before," Lily said quietly. "Once, when I was 19, right after my father died. I came here thinking I'd find peace in the darkness." His voice was hollow. "I almost didn't come back out." The tunnel narrowed, forcing them to walk single file. Water dripped somewhere ahead, the sound magnified by the confined space. Lily's dress caught on splintered timber supports, ancient wood that crumbled at her touch. A gunshot exploded behind them, deafening in the enclosed space. The bullet ricocheted off stone, whining past Lily's ear, close enough to feel the heat. She ducked instinctively, her heart hammering. "They're too close," Jonah said. "We need to go deeper, find a place to hide until they give up or get lost." They ran now, abandoning caution for speed. The tunnel twisted and turned, branched and reconnected. Lily lost all sense of direction, trusting Jonah to navigate the labyrinth. Behind them, the voices of their pursuers grew confused, arguing about which passage to take. Then Jonah stopped so suddenly Lily crashed into his back. The lantern light fell on something that made her blood freeze. A skeleton, still wearing the rotted remains of work clothes, lay against the tunnel wall, bones picked clean by time and rats. A rusted pickaxe lay nearby, and scattered around the body were papers, somehow preserved in the dry air of the mine. "Another soul who got lost," Jonah said quietly. "May he rest in peace." But Lily was staring at something else. Around the skeleton's neck, hanging on a tarnished chain, was a brass locket. She knelt down, her hands trembling as she reached for it. The locket fell open at her touch. Inside was a photograph, faded, but still visible. A young man, maybe 25, with eyes she recognized because she saw them every time she looked in a mirror. And engraved on the inside of the locket, in careful script, "Michael Brennan, Philadelphia, 1857. "No," the word came out as a whisper. "No, this isn't possible." Jonah held the lantern closer, seeing what she saw. "Lily, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." She picked up one of the papers scattered near the body. It was a letter, dated September 15, 1858, the day after Isaiah Stone's death. The handwriting was her father's. She knew it as well as her own. "I can't stay. Pike knows I suspect him. Tonight he threatened me, said accidents happen to men who ask too many questions. I'm leaving Colorado, going back to Philadelphia, where I have family. I'll change my name, start over. Tell Jonah I'm sorry. Tell him his father was the best man I ever knew, Michael Brennan." But her father had never made it to Philadelphia, or rather, the man who'd raised her, who'd taught her carpentry, who died 2 years ago, hadn't been Michael Brennan at all. He'd been someone else, someone who'd taken her father's identity after finding his body in this mine. "The man I called father," Lily said, her voice breaking. "He wasn't my father. He was an imposter. He stole my real father's life after Pike murdered him here." The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. That's why Michael Brennan had never spoken of Colorado, why he'd changed when Lily asked about his past, why he'd taught her carpentry with techniques that felt learned rather than natural. He'd been living a stolen life, and Lily had never known. "We need to move," Jonah said gently. "Cain's men are still coming." But Lily carefully took the locket, slipping it into her bodice alongside Pike's journal. "My real father deserves justice too. He died trying to expose Pike's crime. I'm finishing what he started." They left the skeleton behind, moving deeper into the mine. The tunnel began to slope upward, showing signs of fresher air. Jonah extinguished the lantern, and far ahead Lily could see faint daylight filtering through a collapsed section of tunnel. "The eastern exit," Jonah said, "comes out on the far side of the mountain, miles from where we entered. If we can reach it before they figure out where we went, we'll have a full day's head start to Denver." They climbed through rubble and around collapsed timbers, squeezing through gaps barely wide enough for a person. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit had faded. Cain's men were lost in the labyrinth, unwilling to go deeper without knowing the way out. The daylight grew brighter, and then they were through, emerging onto a rocky slope on the mountain's far side, the morning sun warm on their faces after the cold darkness of the mine. Below them, miles away, they could see the glint of the South Platte River and the distant rooftops of Denver. 2 days' walk, Jonah said, if we move fast. They moved fast. Down the mountain, through pine forests, across meadows turning gold with autumn. They walked through the day and into the night, stopping only when exhaustion made continuing impossible. They shared Jonah's bedroll under the stars, holding each other for warmth, neither speaking about what came next. On the second day, footsore and exhausted, they reached Denver. The city was everything Silverwood was not. Paved streets, brick buildings, the smell of coal smoke and civilization. Lily felt overwhelmed by the crowds, the noise, the sheer density of humanity after days in the wilderness. The federal marshal's office occupied a stern stone building near the courthouse. Inside, a secretary tried to turn them away, seeing only 2 dirty, desperate-looking people who'd clearly been living rough. "We have evidence of murder," Jonah said firmly. "A 30-year-old murder committed by Gerald Pike, currently a councilman in Silverwood. Marshal Wilson needs to see this now." Something in his voice, some core of authority that came from being a business owner and respected craftsman, made the secretary pause. "Wait here." 5 minutes later, they were in Marshal Thomas Wilson's office, a large man with gray hair and sharp eyes, watching as Lily spread Pike's journal pages and the stolen formula across his desk. He read in silence, his expression growing darker with each page. When he finished, he looked up at them. "This is a confession to murder and theft. If it's genuine—" "It's genuine," Lily said. "I took it from Pike's private office 3 nights ago, and there's more." She showed him the locket, explained about the skeleton in the mine, about her false father, and the real Michael Brennan, who'd died trying to expose the truth. Wilson leaned back in his chair. "You realize what you're asking me to do. Gerald Pike is a powerful man. He has friends in the territorial government. This won't be a simple arrest." "We're not asking for simple," Jonah said. "We're asking for justice. For my father Isaiah Stone, for Lily's father Michael Brennan, for Walter Murphy and everyone else Pike and Cain have destroyed over 30 years. Marshal Wilson studied them for a long moment. Then he stood, reaching for his gun belt. "All right. We ride for Silverwood tomorrow at dawn. I'll bring 6 deputies. We'll arrest Pike and Cain, bring them back here for trial." He pointed at the documents. "This evidence will be secured in the courthouse vault tonight. You 2 get cleaned up, get some rest. Tomorrow we finish this." They stayed that night in a modest hotel near the marshal's office, the first real beds they'd slept in for days. Lily stood at the window, watching the city lights, feeling the weight of everything that had happened. Jonah came to stand beside her, clean-shaven for the first time since they'd left Silverwood, wearing borrowed clothes that actually fit. He looked younger, less burdened. "It's almost over," he said quietly. "Will it ever really be over? We've lost so much. Your father, my father. 3 years of your life spent grieving." She turned to face him. "How do we come back from that?" "Together." He took her hands. "Lily, I need to say something I should have said days ago. I love you. Not because you're brave or skilled or fierce, though you're all those things. I love you because you make me remember what it feels like to be alive. You make me want a future instead of just surviving the present." Tears blurred her vision. "I love you too, even though this is the worst possible timing, even though we've known each other less than 2 weeks, even though everything is chaos. I love you." The kiss was gentle this time, not desperate or stolen in the midst of danger, but real and deliberate. A promise being made, a future being chosen. When they finally broke apart, Lily said, "When this is over, when Pike and Cain are in custody, what happens next?" "We go home. We rebuild the workshop. We raise Tommy together." Jonah smiled. "And maybe, if you're willing, we get married. Properly this time, with witnesses and vows and a dress that isn't covered in mine dust." "I'm willing," Lily said. "More than willing." The next morning, they rode back to Silverwood with Marshal Wilson and his 6 deputies, a small army carrying federal authority that even Cain couldn't buy his way around. They arrived at midday when the town was busy with normal life, people going about their business unaware that justice was about to catch up with evil men. They went first to Pike's office. The councilman was there, smoking a cigar, reviewing papers as if nothing had happened. His expression when Marshal Wilson walked in was almost comical, shock and fear warring for dominance. "Gerald Pike," Wilson said formally. "You're under arrest for the murder of Isaiah Stone in September 1858 and conspiracy to commit murder in the death of Michael Brennan. You have the right to remain silent." Pike's face went white. "You can't prove anything." "I'm a councilman. I have rights." Wilson dropped Pike's own journal on the desk. "You confessed, in writing, in your own hand." The arrest of Vincent Cain was less civilized. When the marshal and his deputies surrounded Cain's mill, Cain tried to run, firing a pistol at Jonah before 3 deputies tackled him to the ground. The bullet missed, splintering a wooden beam inches from Jonah's head, but Cain's intent was clear. "Attempted murder of a federal witness," Wilson said grimly as his men hauled Cain to his feet. "That's 20 years right there, even before we get to the conspiracy charges." The town gathered in the main street, watching as Pike and Cain were loaded into a prison wagon. Lily stood with Jonah, Kate, and Tom Fletcher, seeing justice finally arrive after 3 decades of waiting. Pike looked at Jonah as the deputies locked his chains. "Your father was a fool. He could have been rich if he'd just let me handle the business side." "My father was a good man," Jonah said coldly. "Something you'll never understand." As the prison wagon rolled away toward Denver, Kate put her arm around Lily. "You did it, child. You actually did it." "We did it," Lily corrected. "All of us." Tommy ran up, throwing his arms around Jonah, then Lily, tears streaming down his face. "You came back. You promised you'd come back, and you did." "I keep my promises," Jonah said, ruffling the boy's hair. "Always." The morning sun turned the workshop golden, dust motes dancing in the light streaming through the eastern windows. Lily stood at the workbench, carefully fitting a drawer into the frame of a custom bureau ordered by a Denver hotel. Her belly was round under her work apron, 6 months pregnant, but her hands were as steady as ever. "Tommy, check the joints on that chair," she called to the boy at the far bench. "Make sure they're square before you glue." Tommy, now 12 and shooting up like a weed, nodded seriously. He'd grown into his role as apprentice carpenter, his natural talent blossoming under patient instruction. The chair he was working on showed real skill, joints fitted tight, legs perfectly straight. The workshop door opened and Jonah entered, carrying lumber fresh from the sawmill. He'd filled out in the past year and a half, no longer the gaunt man Lily had first met. Success suited him. Stone and Brennan Carpentry had become the most respected workshop in the territory, their waterproof varnish formula finally being used legally, profits shared fairly among the partners. Tom Fletcher had invested his life savings to become a third partner, handling the business side while Jonah and Lily focused on the craft. The old blacksmith was semi-retired now, spending his days in the workshop teaching Tommy the finer points of metalwork, joking that the boy would be a master of both trades before he turned 20. "Inspection from the Denver Railroad Commission," Jonah said, setting down the lumber and pulling out a letter. "They want to order 500 treated beams for a new bridge. The contract's worth $4,000. Lily whistled softly. "That's 3 months' work." "More like 4, with the baby coming." Jonah moved behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, his hands resting on her rounded belly. "Have you thought about names?" "If it's a girl, Ruth Anna, after both your losses." She leaned back against him. "If it's a boy, Michael Isaiah, after both our fathers." "Perfect," Jonah said quietly. "They'd all be proud, I think, of what we've built here." Kate appeared in the doorway, carrying a basket of lunch. "Quit your canoodling and come eat. Tommy's growing boy needs feeding, and that baby's not going to build itself on love alone." They ate together in the workshop, as they did most days, a found family bound together by shared grief and hard-won happiness. Kate told stories about the new boarders at Murphy's rooms. Tommy demonstrated a joint he'd perfected. Tom Fletcher complained good-naturedly about the price of iron. After lunch, Lily walked out to the front of the workshop where a new sign hung, painted in gold letters on polished walnut. Stone and Brennan Carpentry established. 1885. Master craftsman, custom furniture, waterproof treatments. Below, in smaller letters, partners J. Stone. L. Brennan Stone, T. Fletcher. She remembered arriving in Silverwood with 11 cents and a forged letter, bruised and desperate and alone. Remembered thinking her life had hit rock bottom, that there was nowhere left to fall. She'd been wrong. Rock bottom had been the foundation on which she'd built something real. Jonah came to stand beside her, his arm around her waist. "What are you thinking?" "That I came here with nothing and somehow ended up with everything." She looked up at him. "That sometimes the worst mistakes lead to the best futures." "The carpenter's mail-order mistake," Jonah said with a smile. "Best mistake I never made." She laughed, and the sound carried on the Colorado wind, across the workshop that had become a home, past the mountains that had tested them, toward a future unwritten and full of possibility. 11 cents had bought her a stagecoach ticket to Silverwood, but courage, skill, and stubborn determination had bought her a life worth living, and love, unexpected and hard-won, had bought her a family worth fighting for. In the end, that was the best trade she'd ever made. The end.